Welcome back to the Voices of Change. I'm your host, Tex Wambui, and this episode explores, the link between environmental injustice and mental health, particularly in post-colonial and underserved communities. And we're going to draw from historical trauma, policy failures, as well as modern mental health challenges from the United States to Kenya, Nairobi, and we'll explore what healing looks like when it's culturally rooted. So today we're going to explore a theme that sits at the edge of two urgent crises, climate and mental health. And we're going to call it environmental because the wounds of environmental injustice don't just affect our air, water, and homes. They also weigh in on our minds, our nervous system, our ability to feel safe and well. So joining us today is Nimrod Aberi, founder and CEO of Calm Minds Initiative. Nimrod, man, I know you and Hussein have been doing a lot of work when it comes to what we're doing with Voices of Change, but I know you have a Calm Minds Initiative and everything that's going on. So first just give the audience a little bit about who you are, your background, where you come from, and currently what you do, and kind of how you came to this point of what you're doing now.
Okay, thank you very much. So before I talk about the Calm Minds Initiative, I'm Nimrod Aberi and I'm a student of law. And it's something that I coined while I was in my first year. And I thought about my passion generally, because since I was young, I've always been interested in trying to see how people think. Why do people think in a certain way? The psychological differences between different people. What are the reasons? Either the background, is it the trauma, is it the way their character, is it genetic? And I realized that why should I only study about people and know how they behave and the way they react to certain circumstances, while I could start up something that can also help those people who think in a certain way due to trauma start having a positive mindset, for example, start seeing things differently. So that's how I came up with the Calm Minds Initiative. And from the word itself, calm minds, having a relaxed mind. Of course, you might be having stress and everything, the pressure, there's pressure all over, but you cannot have that to deter your peace of mind. So knowing how to manage the stress, the pressure is part of the thing that we do at Calm Minds to educate the masses on what they should do right, and what they have been doing wrong, and how they can rectify on such issues. Additionally, we also partner with organizations that are now based on reviving the biolife, and by biolife I mean the birds, the fish, the animals. Now that is how we got into the environmental space. And a part of the initiative that my friend here Hussein have in the Voices of Change, that whose current aim and focus is on the Mango wetlands, trying to have it registered as and considered as a Ramsar site. That's how we met, and it was a nice experience. And that's how we decided to come in handy and see how the species of birds that have been lost or that have migrated from the Mango wetlands how the Mango wetlands can be reclaimed and have the birds regarding the place as home as it was before. Yeah, and I believe the change starts with us. So yeah, I hope I've mentioned what the audience will want to hear about. In case there's any other thing, I could mention it as we carry on.
Yeah, that's very true, man. And I definitely would attest to the aspect of biodiversity is very important to an area, especially an area that's considered a groundwater conservation site like Banguo. And then what we're doing now with Voices of Change, I really like that we are pushing on the aspect of restoring the area, and conserving the area because birds are not gonna go somewhere where there's no water. They need water. They're a living thing, and if we cannot find a way to keep the place clean, keep the trees there, there's not going to be a place for those birds to habitate. So I'm really happy to hear that. I'm glad you really shared that. Now, Nimrod, when we think about environmental injustice, right, we often picture things like smog, flooding, or fuel costs, right? but there's a psychological side to it. According to the World Health Organization, climate change will contribute to over 250,000 additional deaths annually from stress-related illnesses by 2030, including from mental health conditions, right? And in Kenya, it's a country right now that's facing, rising inflation, political stress. Currently, right now, in the past couple of weeks, there's been a lot of uprisings going on. And it is also climate-related displacement. And mental health conditions are, they're rising rapidly. Yet only about 100 people serve only about 100 psychiatrists, serve a population of 50 million people. And how do you see environmental conditions such as like pollution, displacement of biodiversity, or the threat of climate disaster showing up in people's mental health?
Sure. So, number one, the psychological effects, the reason why it has not been amplified is because most of the time it is usually subconscious. Most of the people are unconscious about what is actually happening and the reason why they have the psychological stress. Let me call it the ecological trauma or the environmental anxiety. So the way I see pollution in itself, number one, it brings discomfort. That's the first response that a person gets. That's the first cognitive, the one that is conscious about, like, why is there a lot of smoke in this area? I don't feel comfortable breathing. So that's number one. Number two, we have very bad smell, and we have noise pollution that may come from industrial activities in the area. So what does it do to the mind? So subconsciously, consciously you become irritated, but subconsciously it adds on to your stress, and you feel as if your space starts cramping up. But normally you won't notice because, as I said, it's subconscious. So the psychological part of it, we should stop now treating this anxiety and psychological effects as a diagnosis only, because before we start saying that it is because try to cope up with the environmental waste, the air pollution, that you need to understand, you need to cope up with it, because that's how you can avoid. But you cannot avoid something that actually is the root cause of something. So instead of saying how can people cope up with the environmental degradation, you should start encouraging why is it there in the first place. So that's something that I've really noticed. And what I can say about the environment, place where you live in, because your mental health starts with a place where you live in, because your mind exists in the unseen. Well, let me call it unseen, because you physically exist, but emotionally, you emotionally feel what happens around you and mentally think about what is actually happening around you, either consciously or subconsciously. So what I can say, there's a big difference when you go to the city and when you go to the place where there is a lot of trees. Let me not call it rural, because we also have trees and very good places in the cities. Let me call it a place where it has been degraded and a place that has been maintained or are protected as far as the trees are concerned and the nature in itself. So when you wake up in the morning, what is the first thing you usually hear? The first thing is in a very environmentally conserved area, the first thing you hear is birds chirping. You can breathe in the good natural air. And what it does, it reduces your stress by a very great percentage, because number one, you feel as if your space isn't cramped. That's what I mentioned earlier in the subconscious space. And also the second thing is that the chirping of birds is musical. It has an healing aspect of it, because a study shows that the chirping of birds and natural sounds from animals, they do better as far as your mental aspect is concerned than even musical healing, which is something that I was surprised. So, but when you wake up, the first thing in the city, either you hear the horning of cars or the loud music, be it even no, number one, you'll notice there are no birds because number one, and number two, birds love places that are natural in nature, because that's why they are not in places where it's only high rises and buildings. So the only way we can, as I talked earlier about the biolife, we can even have the animals, because the animals, they are also thinking either subconsciously or consciously. So their mental health also matters, because that is how they are able to live. As you mentioned earlier, people dying of depression. See, mental health is also related to how somebody lives and how somebody carries on their daily businesses. So if we don't try to curb those negative effects of climate change that are later leading on to mental health decline, it also leads to increased rates of death due to mental health and mental challenges, and also depression, anxiety, be it trauma. Yes, so that's what I can say for now uh, about the environmental degradation, which is having a really heavy toll, and it has to be addressed early before it gets to big before it gets to greater masses and greater numbers of people affected that we cannot control.
That's very well said, man. And, in many communities, both in the US and also across Africa, people live near highways, factories, or even flood prone zones. And I like the fact what you said about the birds don't want to be in areas where there is, high rises or skyscrapers. Birds want to be in areas where there's that actual natural serenity that they feel comfort. And this is kind of now to highlight on the aspect of the importance of restoring Mongol, because it's now giving those birds a secure, safe place that they have always known that they can go to. But with human activity, certain times, I would say we are the greatest creature on this planet, but we are also one of the worst creatures on this planet because we take away from the others. But the others, birds, what are birds really taking away from us? I don't see the point of what birds are taking away from us human beings. They're bringing us actually more things than they are taking away from us. So I think it's our duty and a responsibility as well to be able to restore those areas and those safe havens for them, because it's also about their subconscious well-being and ensuring that we can also interact with yeah. If you Professor Pilo, if you ever get to see this episode, this is an invite to you to come on to the Voices of Change podcast and come and talk with us and engage with us. And also, when you get the chance, when you see this video, Professor Pilo, go visit Mongol and help us in our restoration journey. But now, before we get into the talking about Calm Minds Initiative and healing kind of from a cultural work, sasa kwani mambo haya yanatokea wapi? Maneno ya mapolisi kututupia marisasi Kenya. Where the hell did this come from? Like, why is this shit happening?
Honestly, it's not a pleasing and something good to hear about. But you understand the grief that comes from the people, not only from the tear gas, because also from the fire that people might also start in order to show the aggression that as a response from the also aggression from the police. It's something that I cannot even start talking about the psychological trauma, because it is quite magnificent. It's quite magnanimous, let me say. So because people's businesses went down, because you find for that day there's no business that is being carried on. Another thing, the people who experience, the people who actually are not part of the protest, or the people who are carrying on their businesses, they get their businesses interfered with and their lives, because you find the following day after the protest, you can still, in some parts of the country or in some parts of the city, you can still smell the tear gas and your eyes can get watery due to the tear gas that is still lingering in the air, which is quite a sad turn of events. And what I usually say, climate grief is real, but ecological trauma and climate anxiety is not pathological. it is a logical and conscious response to a systemic failure. That's what I usually say. So if you try to, when I say a systemic failure, let's try to follow that path before it even came to a tear gas. Number one, people had gone to the protests in demand for good governance. Good governance, the fact that there was no good governance or there is poor leadership, then that means people go to demonstrate. And if people go to demonstrate and protest, they get to be tear gassed, which is actually really very wrong. And not only does it make people to have even, you can actually get sick from the tear gas. Someone was saying they got a certain cold. Is it really a cold, really, or should I call it a smoke? A smoke disease. They got their nostrils blocked for like 2 weeks or something because of the tear gas, and they coughed until their voice went out. So
Wow,
that is yeah, yeah,
that
yeah.
is sad, man. And you really, something you really said, that's the systemic approach, right? And we'll kind of get into this, the aspect of the colonial and post-colonial and everything, but at the Calm Minds Initiative, right? You're the founder and CEO of Calm Minds Initiative. You kind of take a culturally grounded approach. So why is it essential to center cultural identity and history in healing, especially for our communities and for our living creatures around us? Like, why is that so essential?
Thank you very much, Tech. So number one, it is really good when you connect with your home. When you usually go far, you say east or west, home is the best. So when you bring it closer to home, when you say culture, we need to embrace culture. Actually, usually treat culture as if it is an independent entity. It is an independent element. But you should embrace it as part of us, because culture is who we are. Because some people say the cultural aspect, then there is them. So it's as if they are two different entities or different people. Yeah. So now, as we delve into this topic of cultural, now let me bring something that many of us might have not experienced, especially this current age of ours, but it's something that if you have experience, you can relate with. The storytelling time. When you are going to your granny, your grandfather, and you could see it, not really beside a fire or something, maybe even in the living room, and they start telling you about the history, about their cultures. You see, okay, you see, I've been infected by I'm saying their culture, and I'm supposed to say by our culture. They tell us about how they were living in the past, how they used to do things, how different it is right now, what brought the change. And deep down, you feel really relaxed, you feel at home, and it's something that boosts your mental health and keeps you calm. People usually underestimate the power of such an environment. Let's talk about even the songs that we have in our cultures, the rhythmic that align with the language itself, the rhythmic tones, and so it's something that is really beautiful, and I really love my culture to start with. So some of the things that used to happen in the past are actually part of the reasons why, because you find in the past, in some communities, they would go for farming, and apart from farming, you find that their grandparents or their mothers and parents used to tell them, now this tree here is to to plant it in order for it to be under your name, and it will be a legacy even for your children. So it is a culture that actually, maybe people are conscious about the environmental aspect or not, but looking at it from a broader perspective, you can see that by planting tree as a legacy or planting trees so that your children could come and see it. And it's something that continue to make the environment healthier, the air purer, and also it also brought some togetherness. So I guess culture plays a very big role as far as environmental conservation is concerned, and as far as the mental aspect is concerned. So it's something that we need to actually bring and embrace. Yes. Thanks.
Wow, that's I really I can't echo that even stronger, but that's you said that right correctly, because I do believe that ancestral knowledge is very important, right? And Hussein is out there taking that with Voices of Change, Mongol Restoration. So shout out to you, Hussein, for doing that and keep doing that, man. I know that's passed down from your father, and he's been very monumental in helping you out with that. So keep that going. That's considered passing down kind of generational knowledge of things that need to be done. And then also kind of, I think the aspect of, decolonizing kind of the healing framework, right? Which plays a role into intergenerational trauma. So now in Kenya, right, colonial era institutions like I think the Nairobi Lunatic Asylum, or I think they call it now Madhari Hospital, it treated mental health as like a carousel, or like a racialized issue. And these legacies are still felt today in how people seek or avoid that support. So how can, people, individuals, communities reframe healing on their own terms? And what does community resilience look like in practice with that aspect of things? And can you like kind of share an example with your kind of what you're doing with Calm Minds Initiative?
Sure. So actually, thank you for bringing that out. Had I forgotten about it? The Nairobi Lunatic Asylum is, first of all, the name itself is kind of scary, even for someone who would want just a simple advice from a psychiatrist or a psychologist, because lunatic is such a big word. But let's just call it what it is, hospital. So that is let me call, when you're trying to decolonize the mind, and it is a system that was brought from, let me say, the colonizers, or mostly from the Western culture, that does not really embrace the togetherness and also bring people. It is like they set you apart, and it is kind of difficult even for someone. If you try to tell someone, you can actually go there, but the Mandar referral hospital is usually a referral. It also plays a big role. We cannot underestimate and maybe downplay its role in the society, because it helps people who have been referred by other people to that place. But also, you can actually walk in there and just get advice, or even know how people get treatment. But when you try to look at it from another angle, you will realize the fact that you are treating them as sick people, yet they are people who are normal and might have been victims of this, what I call systemic failures, which now led to this emotional traumas, mental health, anxiety, mental health challenges such as anxiety, depression. And you find some of the problems, as you said, that result from flooding, extreme drought, and famine. It all trickles down to the mental aspect, which made people either commit suicide, which is something that not many people talk about, and it's something that if we could correct it from its core roots, we could actually prevent most of the thing that is actually happening. We also need to, another thing that I need to say is that community first solutions, like the community first solutions, is always and will always be greater than import models, because import models might have worked in another system, but now to our system, it doesn't work. So it is about time we start actually trying to see, when we talk about friendship, actually I've remembered that a while ago, people used to not only commune together and having things communally, they usually used to visit each other. Nowadays, you find that you don't even know your neighbor. Your neighbor, somebody who is really close to you. And let me not even talk about the relatives and even people in your close friends that you only have to organize that one thing once. So there's that aspect that has been clearly eroded, maybe due to the system itself, the way it is built, but also it's people need to create time. People need to be conscious about, because you find that some people may be free, but they're not conscious of the importance of having to create and maintain that relationship, because that's the relationship that keeps people going. Because if you ask someone what keeps you going, they'll say my children, my family. So now, how about we make it communal? Let us bring it to the community. And now that's part of the mental Carmine's initiative objectives, to ensure that people in the community are made aware of ways in which they can be able to maximize on the resources that they have. And also, apart from maximizing the resources that they have, they also maximize on the people that they have, the human resource, let me say. Try interacting with them, tell people of your problems, and also make it a communal effort to set places aside even for planting of trees. Even in the cities, you may say, let's have this whole lane or this whole for trees to grow. Let us have the birds have a place even to perch before they fly, because you find that birds really love a very quiet and very nice place. Even the animals themselves, you find that those that live in the at home, or compared to those that live in the cities, they live different lifestyles and different lives, and you find that their mental health and also their calmness in the, as far as the mind is concerned, varies a lot. So something that it happens most of the time subconsciously. That's why you find that this area of mental health is not usually talked about. Is mostly either underfunded or under talked about, but it's something that is rooted within us from the systems. So we need to have conscious efforts in reclaiming the lost land, either through wasteful use of land and mining. You find that in places that people mine and they live, there are no plans of how they can reclaim the place and even plant the trees. So yes, so when you are trying to have this mental health aspect, we need to encourage people to come and make it communal. So it will make people actually embrace the fact that it is good to bring your problems or even advice. Just get to know what are the symptoms, what are the signs that you can start noticing. Or sometimes you may feel disconnected. What else do you need? So that's what we do at Carmen's initiative. We open the space, make it an open space, and encourage people to bring their problems or whatever they feel that is not okay. And if they need medical assistance, then now we can refer them. Otherwise, we should just make
Wow,
it something, yeah,
that is
something good.
that is really awesome, man. I really like how you mentioned the communal aspect of things. And also just breaking away from that colonial type mindset of things and referring back to the tree planting. I know you guys we just recently did the tree planting in Mongol, and going back to what you were saying initially about the aspect of planting that tree and knowing that this tree now is going to be here for generations to come, and it's going to provide a source of habitat, not just for the people, but also for the birds and stuff. And from what I understood, I also heard those trees you guys planted are fruit bearing. Wow! So we're also now partaking into the food insecurity aspect of things. Now people will also have food available to them. Um, but yeah, I really appreciate y'all for kind of deep diving, just having a conversation about this environmental of things, because I feel like sometimes people just talk too much about the mental health aspect of things and kind of forget what's around you and the surroundings and the things that need to be done to ensure that the mental is good, but also around you is good, because it's a 8-dimensional type of thing. It's not only mental health, it's also physical health, social health, so environmental health, intelligent health, and all those things. I'm not an expert in those things, but if people are interested in finding resources, please reach out to us and we can get y'all to those specific areas. But now we've come to this segment of our pod today, where it's the 3 for the founders. And unfortunately, we don't have my co-host here today, so I hope when he sees this, he knows that. Anyways, so the 3 for the founders segment is going to be 3 things from today's conversation we're going to share. I'll go first, and Nimrod, you'll have our hot topic today. And the question to kind of think about is, what's been guiding you lately in this idea of environmental, right? And for me, I'll go with number 1. Healing isn't always about returning to who you were before. Sometimes it's about building the safety and selfhood you never had the chance to experience. That's what I would take away from this conversation today on the aspect of environmental.
Okay, my takeaway is that number 1, we need to notice and we need to take into consideration that there is no development without mental well-being, and there is no mental well-being without environmental justice. Something that you need to echo out loud is that environmental justice is, what are you doing right for the environment? Because we cannot be wanting to do justice to be done on us, yet we are the people who are doing injustice and mistreating this pure and these natural resources, misusing them. And another thing, we need to know that this climate grief and the climate anxiety, our grief is not a weakness. We need to see that our grief is a signal, let me say. It's a call for us to get to the drawing board. Okay, we have been to the drawing board many times. We actually need to act. That's something that we need. Because we have the frameworks, we have the policies, but they are all on paper. And we cannot have fresh air on paper. We do not get oxygen exchange with carbon dioxide from paper. Actually, as a matter of fact, paper is a product of carbon. So we need to have the trees that we cut in order to make these papers on the ground. We need to plant these seedlings. We need to educate the masses on what is actually happening, because some of the things that we usually treat as normal, you find that there are people who actually want to implement it, or there are people who are suffering from these things. It's like you are feeling a headache, but you don't know from which part of the head it is hurting you from, and you don't know when you got it. Did you hit a wall or something? So if we get to the root cause, get to address these problems, once we have, let's diagnose it, not as a health problem, but as an injustice to as a systemic failure to the injustice that we do to the environment. So my hot take for today is that we need to embrace the culture, try to incorporate it within the communities, because the communities is what most of the people resonate with and people relate with. And at Carmine's initiative, it's something that we encourage everyone to take part in, not only having the mental health stable and having a calm mind, but also to ensure how they continue that, how sustainable is their mental health status. So that is my hot take for today. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you, man. We shall continue what we're doing, Voices of Change. That's why we are here as the Voices of Change. We are here to do the storytelling, restore our historical Mongol wetlands, which one day will be an international Ramsar site. And we need all the respective holders. We have been reaching out to y'all. Y'all better respond, because if you don't, we'll be at your door knocking. And also check out what we're also doing with the Empowering Green Mobility, where at some point we're gonna be focusing on doing that in Kenya as well and other places of the world, to ensure that we can create communities that not only rely on so much things that are impacting our environment in a negative way, but actually bringing positive things. Hint, hint, like bicycles. Bicycles are very important. So one day, maybe look out, guys. You might find a bike lane somewhere that Voices of Change came up with. But anyways, Nimrod, Thank you so much for this conversation, man. It was a pleasure having you on the pod, and looking forward to the work that Calm Minds Initiative does, and also the work that you'll be doing with Voices of Change as well, alongside Hussein. So thank you for that, and Hussein, thank you to you for joining the conversation today, man. And to everyone tuning in, thank you for holding this space with us, and please share this episode, have a review or comment, as they say, and remember, environmental justice includes emotional justice too. So, as always, please go like, subscribe, comment, whatever you want to do. And make sure to check us out on the Alive Podcast Network. And you can download the app from the App Store or Google Android. Or what is it called? Google Store, I mean. Anyways, apart from that, thank you to everyone for tuning in. It's been a pleasure. And as we always say here, we are the voices of change. Peace.